Picture this for a second. What if someone could see straight into your private thoughts? How would that make you feel? Uneasy? Vulnerable? Honestly, it should. And here's the twist. This isn't just some wild idea from a movie. It's something that actually happens more often than most people think. That ability has a name. It's called clairvoyance. At its simplest, clairvoyance is the ability to sense or perceive things that aren't right in front of your eyes. Sometimes that means catching glimpses of the past. Other times, it's an uncanny awareness of what's happening right now, and in certain cases, it can even be visions of what's still ahead. Now here's where it gets interesting. Clairvoyance itself isn't automatically good or bad. It's neutral. The outcome depends entirely on the person who's using it. On the positive side, clairvoyants have been able to help police solve crimes, reunite families by locating missing people, or even offer comfort to someone who's struggling with grief. But there's also another side to it. When you step into the unseen world, you open a door, and not everything that walks through that door comes with good intentions. Some entities are benevolent, uplifting, and supportive. Others, they can be manipulative, deceptive, even harmful. That's why the real danger doesn't come from clairvoyance itself. It comes from the mindset of the person using it. If someone lets their ego take control, that gift can quickly twist. Instead of being a pure tool for clarity, it becomes distorted, reflecting back selfish desires or personal illusions. Contrary to popular belief, clairvoyance isn't something limited to a select group of chosen individuals or a mystical elite. It's not a rare superpower. Instead, it's a natural potential that every single one of us carries. The difference lies in whether or not we choose to develop it. How? By turning inward. Through practices like meditation, honest self-reflection, and the ability to sit with emotions without judgment, we slowly peel away the layers and open portals to a deeper vision. Think of it less like borrowing a skill from somewhere outside yourself, and more like uncovering something that's been within you all along. When you nurture calmness, humility, and openness, that inner vision begins to awaken. And here's the key. It's not an exclusive path. Anyone willing to quiet the noise of ego and embrace stillness can experience it. With that comes a clearer perception, both of your inner world and the outer one. Of course, not everyone is convinced. Plenty of people dismiss psychic experiences altogether. They'll tell you it's nothing more than superstition, pseudoscience, or outright fantasy. For centuries, cultures have debated and argued about these abilities. To skeptics, seeing beyond the five senses has always sounded like wishful thinking or delusion. But here's the truth. Clairvoyance isn't about spinning fairy tales. It's about heightened awareness, a sensitivity that, whether we realize it or not, most of us have brushed up against at some point in our lives. Think about dreams, for example. Every single person dreams, from toddlers to the elderly. And in dreams, something fascinating happens. Our minds temporarily break free from the ordinary limits of reality. They weave stories, symbols, and images that stretch beyond time and space. In those moments, it's almost like we're dipping into a deeper vision, a perception normally hidden while we're awake. Now, pause and reflect on your own dreams. Have you ever wondered what they really mean? Dreams act like threads spun from the hidden parts of the mind. Each one is a doorway into the subconscious, offering tiny glimpses of the unknown. They're not random. They're like lenses, mystical windows that combine symbolic storytelling with psychic insight. When you look closely, you'll notice that dreams operate outside of the usual rules of time and space. They let us dive into an ocean of symbolism. And in that ocean, psychic perception becomes a light, illuminating corners of the mind that are otherwise hidden, helping us decode the subtle messages hidden within those nightly adventures. The Rosicrucians, a mystical order that studied spiritual perception, offered an interesting perspective on this. In their teachings, psychic awareness is closely tied to our senses: sight, hearing, touch, even emotion. But they believed these senses were more than just tools for interacting with the physical world. To them, each sense was also a gateway, pointing toward higher levels of awareness. And here's something worth keeping in mind: this ability isn't rare. What makes it seem rare is simply that most people ignore it. Like any skill, if you don't practice, it fades. If you reject it, it goes dormant. But when you nurture it, when you give it practice and attention, it grows stronger. So, how do you actually nurture it? The first step is to let go of the belief that physical eyesight is the only real way to see. From the time we're born, we're conditioned to rely on our eyes as the ultimate authority on reality. As long as we cling to that idea, we block ourselves from developing deeper sight. That belief is the biggest barrier standing in the way of true psychic vision. Once we loosen that grip, the resistance begins to dissolve mentally and physically. That's when the path opens. From there, it's about practice: meditation, visualization, breathwork, cultivating inner stillness. All of these practices reawaken something that's already been inside you the whole time. At its core, clairvoyance is simply the ability to perceive information without leaning on the traditional senses. Parapsychology defines it as the capacity to perceive objects or events beyond the normal limits of space and time. And here's the fascinating part: it isn't some gift handed down from above to a special few. It's part of the human blueprint. As we evolve spiritually, that ability naturally rises to the surface, letting us ask deeper questions that most people never even think to ask. Questions like, what existed before birth? What happens after death? What realities might exist in the dimensions we normally can't see? Within this journey, we find that clairvoyance shows up in two main forms: voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary clairvoyance, sometimes called positive clairvoyance, happens when someone deliberately chooses to open their inner vision. Through consistent practice, a person may learn to visualize past events, sense truths about the present, or even glimpse possible futures. They might perceive people, places, or objects far beyond what their physical eyes could reach. And here's the central point: it takes practice. Just like building muscle, developing voluntary clairvoyance requires repetition and dedication. Meditation, visualization, and specific exercises strengthen this inner sight. Over time, those who practice consistently are able to not only access it, but also control it. They learn to use it for spiritual clarity and for practical purposes too, like making wiser choices or better understanding themselves. The second form is involuntary clairvoyance, sometimes called passive clairvoyance. This one is very different. It doesn't happen because someone set out to trigger it. It happens unexpectedly, without permission. And while that sounds intriguing, the reality can be a lot more unsettling. Involuntary clairvoyance often shows up as sudden images, sensations, or gut feelings that crash into awareness without warning. Imagine going about your normal day when suddenly you see visions or feel impressions you can't explain. For someone who doesn't understand what's happening, this can create stress, anxiety, or even doubts about their own sanity. In some cases, it becomes overwhelming. This kind of clairvoyance may arise from natural sensitivity, spiritual awakenings, or even intense trauma. But no matter the cause, the impact is often the same. The individual feels out of control, caught off guard by a force they didn't invite. So, where do these involuntary experiences really come from? Many spiritual traditions trace them back to a powerful energy known as the serpentine force, more widely called Kundalini. This is often described as a coiled energy resting at the base of the spine, like a dormant spring waiting to be released. It's seen as the body's vital life force, deeply tied to intuition, creativity, and spiritual awakening. When Kundalini stirs and begins its rise up the spine, it activates the chakras, energy centers aligned along the spinal cord. As each chakra awakens, shifts in consciousness begin to unfold. A person may experience expanded awareness, new layers of perception, and heightened sensitivity. And one of the most natural byproducts of this awakening is clairvoyance. This connects directly to the idea of the third eye. For centuries, many spiritual traditions have associated the pineal gland, tucked in the center of the brain, with extrasensory perception. They call it the inner eye, the gateway to intuition. When this eye opens, perception expands far beyond the ordinary. People often describe it as life-changing, like the filters that once narrowed their vision suddenly dissolve, letting them see the world more clearly, more completely, and more truthfully. The link between Kundalini rising and the third eye opening is profound. As the energy ascends, it sparks new forms of awareness. For some, it feels like stepping into an entirely new dimension. But here's the important part. Most clairvoyants don't just wake up one morning fully developed. Their journey is usually gradual. Years of practice, self-discipline, and inner work. That steady development is what helps them stabilize and use their abilities with clarity. This gradual growth sets clairvoyants apart from mediums. On the surface, the two may look similar. Both claim to reach beyond the ordinary senses. But there's a key distinction. A medium acts as a channel, a bridge. Their focus is on direct communication with spirits or entities. Their information is external, coming from the spiritual realm and passed through to the living. A clairvoyant, however, turns inward. Their insights stem from their own psyche, intuition, and ability to perceive subtle energies. Their purpose is usually guidance, knowledge, or self-understanding, not necessarily delivering messages from beyond. Both roles can be valuable, but understanding the difference matters. It's not just about who they're speaking to, it's also about intention, method, and source. Now, this brings us to an essential question. How do you protect yourself while exploring clairvoyance? Because the truth is, opening the doors of perception doesn't come without risks. Whenever awareness expands, you become receptive to more than just uplifting insights. You can also attract energies that are confusing, draining, or even harmful. This is where the teachings of Max Heindel, founder of the Rosicrucian Fellowship, are incredibly useful. Heindel stressed the importance of building inner defenses against obsession or negative influences. He taught that malevolent forces can only gain a foothold if the mind is left unguarded. So, how do you build that protection? First, through your thoughts. Keeping your thinking clear, compassionate, and positive creates a powerful safeguard. Dark or destructive thoughts lower your vibration, making you more vulnerable. But when your thoughts are elevated, filled with clarity, kindness, and love, you rise to a frequency where negativity struggles to touch you. Second, there's the role of prayer and meditation. And this isn't about empty ritual or mechanical repetition. It's about genuine, heartfelt practice. Prayer, when done sincerely, aligns you with higher forces of good. It's less about begging for favors and more about opening yourself to divine support. Meditation, on the other hand, quiets the restless chatter of the mind. It brings balance, steadiness, and harmony, qualities that are crucial when stepping into higher states of perception. And perhaps the greatest protective force of all, love. Love isn't just a feeling, it's a frequency. When you radiate love, even toward those who oppose or unsettle you, you create a shield. Love's vibration is so high that negative entities simply cannot remain in its presence. It's like shining a bright light in a dark room. The shadows have no choice but to vanish. Rosicrucian teachings also emphasize the aura, the energy field surrounding the human body. A strong aura acts like an invisible shield, repelling harmful influences and keeping balance. You can strengthen your aura through simple practices: conscious breathing, regular relaxation, visualization of light surrounding your body. Imagine yourself wrapped in a radiant, protective glow. This visualization doesn't just feel calming, it reinforces your spiritual defenses. And here's an important clarification. Developing clairvoyance isn't about blind faith or rigid devotion. In these teachings, it's about freeing your mind from limitation. It's not about believing in some outside force. It's about awakening what already exists within you. That message is empowering. It means that no matter your culture, background, or religion, you have access to this inner vision. The ability is already there. The question is, are you willing to do the work to uncover it? If what you've heard so far resonates with you, I want you to take a small but meaningful step. Drop a comment below that simply says, "It makes sense to me." That one line tells me this message is connecting with you. And while you're at it, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming explorations we'll dive into together. Now, let's step back for a moment and ask, what is clairvoyance really here to teach us? At its heart, this ability isn't about flashy displays, spooky theatrics, or supernatural stunts. It's about vision. It's about learning to see more deeply into reality, to perceive truth beyond the surface. Think of it like learning an instrument. Anyone can buy a guitar, but if you never practice, you'll never play well. Clairvoyance works the same way. If you ignore it, it stays silent. If you practice, through meditation, dream reflection, or visualization, it gradually sharpens. Over time, it becomes clearer, more stable, and more meaningful. And here's where it gets even more transformative. Clairvoyance isn't just about seeing what others can't. It's about changing yourself. When you practice stillness, let go of ego, and tune into that inner clarity, your whole life shifts. Decisions become easier. Relationships improve. Challenges that once seemed overwhelming suddenly feel manageable. In that sense, clairvoyance stops being a mystical extra and becomes a natural extension of real self-awareness. One point that often gets overlooked is how subtle psychic perception can be. People expect grand visions or cinematic experiences, but more often than not, it shows up in small, everyday ways. Maybe it's a gut feeling that steers you away from a poor decision, maybe it's a dream that nudges you toward an opportunity. Or maybe it's a sudden flash of clarity about something you've been wrestling with for months. These small glimpses are just as valuable as the big ones, sometimes even more so. The challenge is trust. Learning to trust what you perceive, even when it doesn't match logic in the moment, is one of the hardest parts of this path. And trust doesn't mean abandoning reason. It means allowing intuition to stand beside logic to complement it. With practice, you get better at knowing when to follow that inner nudge and when to set it aside. But let's be clear, expanding awareness doesn't make you invincible. The moment you open new doors of perception, you also open yourself to unknown influences. Some of them will be uplifting, others can be confusing, or even harmful. That's why grounding practices are non-negotiable. Prayer, breath work, meditation, visualization, these aren't just extras, they're anchors. They keep you balanced so you don't get swept away by whatever enters through those doors. And here's something crucial. Clairvoyance isn't about escaping life. It's not about hiding in visions of the future or clinging to fantasies of the past. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about engaging with life more fully, seeing with clarity, recognizing patterns, and using that insight to make compassionate, wise choices in the here and now. For some, this journey will mean actively developing voluntary clairvoyance. They'll dedicate themselves to exercises and discipline, treating it like training a muscle. For others, the path may revolve around learning how to handle involuntary clairvoyance, those sudden bursts, without fear. Either way, the goal is the same: self-discovery. When you strip it down, clairvoyance is a reminder that we, as human beings, are far more capable than we usually admit. We're not limited to just 5 senses. We're not locked into a purely physical reality. At our core, we are spiritual beings with layers of perception waiting to be awakened. So, here's the invitation. Start small. Pay closer attention to your dreams. Spend a few minutes a day in meditation. Practice stillness. Cultivate compassion. And watch what begins to shift inside of you. Slowly but surely, your perception sharpens. The fog clears. Your inner vision grows stronger. Maybe the greatest gift clairvoyance offers isn't about predicting the future or digging into secrets from the past. Its true gift is much simpler and much more powerful. It gives us a way to see ourselves clearly, beyond the ego, beyond the fears, beyond the limits we've been conditioned to accept. And when you can see yourself honestly, everything changes. That's why clairvoyance isn't something to chase outside of yourself. It's not a hidden prize that only a chosen few get to unlock. It's already there, resting within you, quietly waiting for you to notice it. The real question is, will you slow down enough to listen? Will you practice? Will you nurture that inner vision until it grows? Think of it like planting a seed. At first, you see nothing. The soil looks the same as it always did, but with time, water, and care, the seed breaks open, sending roots down and a stem up. Clairvoyance is the same way. At first, it feels invisible, almost non-existent, but with meditation, breath work, visualization, and self-reflection, it begins to sprout. Slowly, steadily, it grows into something strong and alive within you. And the beauty of it is that you don't need to wait for dramatic visions or thunderbolt revelations to know it's working. Pay attention to the little things, that instinct that helps you avoid a poor decision, that dream that points you toward an opportunity, that sudden feeling of clarity after weeks of confusion. These subtle moments are proof that your inner sight is waking up. The biggest challenge most people face is doubt. They second-guess themselves. Was that really intuition or just coincidence? Did that dream mean something? Or was it random? Doubt has a way of choking growth before it takes root. The truth is, clairvoyance requires trust. Not blind faith, but a willingness to give your inner voice a seat at the table alongside reason and logic. Over time, with practice, that trust becomes easier. And remember, clairvoyance isn't about replacing common sense. It's about complementing it. It's another tool in your toolkit, one that helps you see more angles, more depth, more meaning. Logic helps you analyze the facts. Intuition helps you interpret the patterns. Together, they give you a fuller picture than either could on its own. But, as we've said before, opening yourself to deeper awareness doesn't make you immune to challenges. The spiritual path is never without risk. When you open new doors, some things that come through will be helpful, enlightening, and inspiring. Others may be confusing or even harmful. That's why grounding practices are so vital. Meditation keeps you steady. Prayer aligns you with higher forces. Visualization strengthens your aura. Breathwork centers your body and mind. These practices aren't optional. They're your anchors. Without them, it's easy to get swept away by whatever shows up. With them, you can explore the unseen with confidence, clarity, and protection. Here's another important perspective. Clairvoyance isn't an escape hatch from real life. It's not about running away from problems or hiding in visions of what might come. In fact, the more you develop it, the more engaged with life you become. You start to see through illusions, to recognize patterns, to understand why things unfold the way they do. And that understanding empowers you to make wiser choices in the present. For some, the path forward will mean actively training in voluntary clairvoyance. They'll practice daily, refining their skills, learning to open that inner sight intentionally. For others, the journey will be about learning to manage involuntary clairvoyance, those sudden flashes and impressions without fear or panic. Either way, the goal isn't spectacle, it's self-knowledge. Because when you boil it down, clairvoyance is less about seeing out there and more about discovering what's always been in here. It's a reminder that human beings are layered, multidimensional, and infinitely capable. We are not bound by five senses alone. We are not confined to the visible world. We are spiritual beings, and our awareness runs deeper than we realize. So where do you start? Start small. Notice your dreams. Spend 5 minutes a day in meditation. Practice being still. Practice compassion. These tiny habits may seem insignificant at first, but over time they build. And as they build, your perception sharpens. The fog of distraction clears. Your inner vision grows brighter. And perhaps the most important shift of all is in how you see yourself. Clairvoyance isn't about becoming someone else. It's about seeing the truth of who you already are. Beyond the fears, beyond the doubts, beyond the limitations you've been taught. That kind of vision doesn't just change what you see. It changes how you live. Closing. So here's the takeaway. Clairvoyance isn't far away. It isn't reserved for the rare or the mystical. It's right here, within you, waiting quietly. The real question is, will you awaken it? Will you practice? Will you grow into the clarity that's been inside you all along? If what you've heard today resonates, let me know in the comments by writing, "It makes sense to me." And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future explorations, because this conversation is only the beginning. There's so much more ahead, more lessons, more discoveries, more opportunities to deepen our understanding together. Let's keep going, side by side, uncovering the hidden potential of the human spirit. Because the truth is this: clear vision doesn't belong to just a chosen few. It belongs to all of us,